How can you scale your remodeling business while maintaining consistent client communication? Well, that's one of the main questions we're talking about with today's guest, Andrew Nuhfer. He's founder of AKN Interiors in Pittsburgh, and in just over 3 years, Andrew has grown his remodeling company to around $3 million a year. He's consistently managing 15 to 20 projects, but has continued to be known for his consistent client communication both in his industry and in his community. In this episode, we're going to be talking about how he's able to bring in his designers early, and he's able to use JobTread to keep his homeowners and teams aligned. If you're trying to scale without the chaos, this episode is for you.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Contractor Growth Network Podcast. I'm Logan Shinholster, and today I'm joined by Andrew Nuhfer from AKN Interiors. Andrew, if I had to guess what the K stands for, I'm going to go with that's your middle name, and your middle name would be Killian.
No, it is Kent.
Kent.
Another somewhat Irish name, I would say.
Because it's like the red beard, so I figured like, hey, like this has got to be it. So That was my second guess. But Andrew's on today. Andrew's been a client of ours now for a few years.
Yeah, I'd say a little over 3. I think I first talked to Allie in the fall of 22, I want to say.
Okay. So a little over 3. And what Andrew does really well is you've also grown really fast. So like when you first joined, and we'll talk a little bit more about your backstory to give some context here, but like a big part of how you've grown has been the amount of energy and effort that you put into pre-construction, the client experience, your use of JobTread, all of that stuff. So that's what the main focus of today is going to be, is basically if you are a client of AKN Interiors, what does life look like when you're working with Andrew and the team? So that's what we're going to be diving into. But Andrew, if you would bestow us with a little bit of your backstory, can you talk a little bit about how did you come to actually like start AKN Interiors? Like, why did you even start a remodeling company in the first place?
So, like most people our age, because you and I are around the same age, we were told, hey, go to college. And, I went to college, did that whole thing. And then when I got out of college, I moved from a small town outside of Erie, Pennsylvania, which is right in the lake, down here to Pittsburgh. And I don't know, worked with my degree for a little while. I really didn't like it. And I had done construction in some way, shape, or form in high school and college. So I kind of just took it as a fallback. And then I'd say, a few years after moving down here, every, job I would work at, I would always be like the youngest one at job sites for a long time. And then as I progressed through my career and I would get promoted and things like that, like I started seeing some of the numbers. And, I just kind of put 2 and 2 together and kind of realized that, there was pretty decent opportunity out there for someone my age to get into the construction industry. Not only that, but my mom is a successful business owner. She actually just sold her business and exited this year. So I was kind of raised in that environment, kind of like you, just to maybe think somewhat in that direction at some point in life, like be my own boss. And then eventually the stars just aligned. I got in an argument with my former boss about paying for gas. And I was like, you know what? Now's the time. Let's do it.
And let's step back for a second. College. What did you study in college that you came out and actually did something with? Because you're one of the few people that I know that actually used their degree for something.
I would use the term used it loosely. I went to school for business finance and then got out of school and went to be a bank teller for a little while.
All right. So money is still involved, or finance is still involved. I did engineering and like I do nothing with it whatsoever now. But I know most people are in that same boat. So you come out, you work for another remodeling company, you quit. What was it like for you, like from an emotional standpoint, like starting your company, AKN? Is it excitement? Is it terror? I guess put yourself back in your shoes, on that day that you said, screw it, I'm going into business for myself. How you feeling?
I mean, I had been doing side work for years and had already started building up a book of customers. So I don't know. I feel like it was kind of a slow burn, like knowing that day was going to come. But I will say, I still look back on the day I put my notice in at work, and that was like the most anxious I'd ever been. But then, kind of once I, got through maybe the first year in business, I was like, this is what I was always supposed to be doing. So I mean, nerve wracking at first, of course, but I had planned for it. I'd saved. I have foregone many big life decisions still to this day, in the name of building up the business, and it's paid off.
That that's how I was. Where like I remember when I was talking to my dad about it, and because I was talking about quitting because I was doing stuff on the side nights and weekends, and I had gotten enough clients that I I didn't have enough hours in the day. And I remember I called out of work sick. It was inside sales at Indeed, and I felt so guilty that I called out sick to be able to work on my own stuff that I'd already I was pacing, I was good, but I was like, man, I feel bad that I'm like double dipping here. And I talked to my dad, and he was like, look, like if you want to do it, do it. What do you have in savings? And I had 6 months of runway, and it was like, why don't you figure it out? But it wasn't which I see every so often. Somebody's like, I quit my job. I'm doing my own thing. I'm tired of it. How do I get customers? I'm like, oh no, like you got to come in with at least some connections on the side or something. So you're not basically just like now you've got, and I see this a lot with people that have like 4 kids. And I started this when I was 25, something like that. So like I had a girlfriend, and that was like my biggest, I don't know, a responsibility at the time. I didn't have kids. I didn't have any of this stuff. And it was just pouring my life into this to be able to like get it off the ground to a certain point. So to be able to like start it with something lined up versus like a total wing it job was like huge, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, I was in a similar boat, girlfriend, but didn't own much of anything, didn't own a home, anything like that. I had some money in a retirement account that I actually cashed in and gave to you guys to build my first website. But other than that, I was like, you know what? Before I have all these responsibilities, let's take a swing at it. Worst case, it blows up and I go back and work for somebody.
So let's now transition over to like running the business. So the big thing that we're talking about is just overall the approach to like client experience. So we're gonna go through some like the tactics and specifics, but like when you think of what most construction and remodeling companies are doing is they like doing the actual thing. They like the swinging of the hammer. They like, figuring out the problem solving in the space. And I hear a lot where people will say things like, I'll be on the phone with a remodeling company, and they'll say something like, look, I'm really good with customers. Customers absolutely love us. And then I'll read the reviews, and the reviews will be like a 4.2. And I'm like, hey, what's up with that? And they're like, well, we have a lot of customers that won't leave reviews, and the only ones that leave them are the ones that aren't super happy. And I'm just like, I get that. But like at the end of the day, if you're really good with customers and like you're client focused, ultimately your reviews should reflect that. And if your reviews are not reflecting that, then you got to go on like a tear to like get a bunch of good reviews to basically show that you are customer focused. But long story short, what typically happens is the people that I talk to that are in that scenario are usually very good with customers as long as the customers make it very easy for the remodeler. But as soon as it becomes hard, that's when it's like, well, they just weren't a very good customer. And that's when they get the bad review. So when you look at your reviews, I mean, you have stellar reviews. I guess, what is your approach to the client experience within the remodel, with the whole experience, from the start, that the time that somebody calls you all the way to completion? How are you approaching the client experience to make sure that they're getting out of it what they want?
I'd say it's a journey. So we start off, our projects have now grown into, the vast majority of them are, 6-figure projects. So they take some planning and legwork up front. And, we start any project with bringing in an interior designer. We have a team that we're partnered with that we've gone as far as putting them on our website. That's how much we believe in them. And we do that so that expectations are set very clearly from the beginning. We do that for the customer's sake, and we do that for our sake too. And as we travel down that road, once they decide to, sign a pre-construction agreement with us, we stay alongside of the designers the whole time. And that can look a number of different ways. It's a number of due diligence things we do, honing and pricing, starting real high and then bringing it down to a final number. And then the design team, they'll hone in on all of the things that will go into the project. That way, before we start the job, they've seen, renderings of what it's going to look like. Our proposals, essentially how I build my proposals now, they're a playbook that I hand over to my team. The benefit to the customer is that it's actually the document that they're signing as well. So I want it to be descriptive enough where I can say, okay, Matt, Justin, management team, here's the job, schedule it, build it, and they shouldn't have to ask me any questions. And we're growing to that point. Not saying that I don't want to be involved or I'm not involved after we sign, but we've grown to a point where I have to be staying ahead of this machine at all times. So I'm not as involved in the production side as I was before. And I think, just long answer to your question, what that does is it shows the customers from the very beginning, like, this is what you're getting. This is what is going to be involved in getting to that point. And we're your partner to get you there from the very beginning, when you were just thinking about it, to when you're actually sitting in the space when it's all said and done.
So what if we circle back to the beginning? You talked about, like, the first thing you do is you set expectations, and I've heard expectations set various ways. Some people are very good at it because there's a whole nuance to expectation setting. I've also heard a lot of people that basically they think they're setting expectations, but what they're really doing is they come off pretty rough, where it's like the homeowner will say, "Hey, Andrew, I'm looking to remodel my kitchen." And your immediate response would be like, "Great, we started $100,000. And it's just like, that technically is expectation setting. However, the way that it's approached with the client typically then makes it feel like it's not as, I don't know, an intimate of a thing. It feels more transactional. What kind of expectations are you setting up front with the homeowner to make sure that as you guys are, because you have a pretty intricate process, that as you're going down this process, you don't get to the end of it and the kitchen that you're going to remodel is going to be 150 and they're thinking 15?
I would say we start with, all our leads come in through the website, and they start off in our CRM. We have a Go High level built out. And I filter through based on the information I'm giving, and I filter out the customers that I think would even make sense or don't make sense. I mean, there are times where stuff just stands out and it's like, hey, we want a sliding glass door put in or something small. And I'm like, we're probably not a good fit. So that we'll start there, and then I'll kind of see what they're looking to do over a call. And nowadays, luckily, I'm able kind of to suss out, like, if it's a project we'd like to take on enough where we'll go out and see them in person. And after that initial meeting, we'll send them out not only like, here's what it's going to take to design it, but I also give them basically a range of, like, this is what the project's going to cost based on other projects we've done. And lately I've been going as far as sending them, hey, here's another project that's very similar to yours. Here's the set of drawings from that project. Here's finished photos. Here's what this project costs, just so they can have their head wrapped around, like, okay, this project was X amount. Mine might be a little bit different, but it's going to be in this sort of range. That way people at least have some idea of the conversation we're having. Not only that, but, we post a lot of stuff on social media for pricing. We have pricing on our website. We're pretty open about talking about it. Our industry, for some reason, thinks it's some state secret to share what things cost. And I think that makes it really difficult from a customer's perspective, because they really might get their heart invested in doing something and they just have no clue what things even might cost.
So with you sharing other photos, other plans, like how has that shifted how the pricing conversation is perceived versus you just basically saying, hey, based off what you're saying, I think you're around X to X amount.
I mean, I haven't been on the other side of the coin, so I can't speak for customers, but what I would imagine is that there's proof in it. I mean, we can show, okay, here are 3 kitchens that we did this year. They were all between $140 and $160,000. Here's finished photos of all 3 of these projects. So it's just proof to the customer that we're not just like pulling numbers out of thin air. It's like, hey, 3 other families have invested around this much for what you're looking to do. And yeah, there might be a little bit of variance in the cost based on like the style you have and maybe some of the things that we put in there, but it's definitely not going to be this low. And it's only going to be this high if you decide, hey, we want like exotic, crazy everything.
Sure. And then, so they say, okay, up front, that sounds like we're thinking 150. So your 140 to 160 range makes a lot of sense. One thing that you do that's very cool is that you have an interior designer that they're not in-house. However, I've never heard a remodeling, for the most part, there's a couple, but for the most part, remodeling companies are not like, oh, I've got an amazing interior designer that I work with and we work really well together. It's a lot of friction back and forth, yet I can tell you from firsthand experience, we're doing a second remodel in my house right now. Both times we've had an interior remodeler that has helped us out with it. And it's been super helpful from a homeowner perspective to really buy into the project itself. So how do you incorporate Jackie, your interior designer, into the process with the homeowner?
I mean, I get her involved from the very beginning. So with when I get on a first call with customers, once I kind of hear more about what they're looking to do, we'll get to a point where they're like, okay, well, where do we move from here? And I say, well, me and Jackie, the lead designer of the team we work with, we come out and look at your project. We talk a little bit further, et cetera, et cetera. And they meet her up front. Because her and I are a team in planning these projects. I mean, I bring her for all of our jobs, and in turn, she brings me projects when customers go directly to her, and it just works out. I mean, she's a user on our JobTread. She's a user on my CRM. She's on our website. It works out very well. We're intertwined together, and we have it pretty well nailed down.
How did you work out the relationship initially? Because I know there can be egos involved as far as she wants you to do things a certain way, you want to do things a certain way. So how did you make sure that you guys were in lockstep to make sure that what she was designing for clients of yours was actually realistic and within budget for what you and the client initially talked about?
I think there was some figuring along the way. I mean, there was a few times where it wasn't necessarily that her and her team were doing anything wrong. It's just I wasn't staying as involved as I should be with the budget, and things got picked that just took things so far into left field that it just put a bad taste in everyone's mouth. So we've learned along the way, kind of how to suss this out. Now we send out a proposal that we ask customers to agree to after we get floor plans. That way we can say, okay, this is the project, what it's going to cost. We have allowances in here for selections. We do that so that the interior designers have a budget for everything to show you 3 different options or whatever. And then we can refine the price from there. But then we're having this broader or more honed in conversation budget wise, still pretty early on. That way it's not like, hey, we talked a range in the beginning and then 3 months later, hey, it's 50 grand more, take it or leave it.
So are you when you're doing your initial proposal, you're sending out a basic floor plan and that will just have allowances with each item. Then that way, if they approve it, then it goes back to Jackie and the team. They go, okay, great. We've got X amount of money for a range hood. This is what we think would work really well based off their style.
Pretty much, yeah. And I have discussions with the designers to kind of see what their style is and kind of what level of finish they are thinking that these people will go. But yeah, I mean, we have that so that the customers can also, we also ask for a small retainer at that point so that we can say, okay, your project, we're going to just put you in pen for first week of March. Now you have between now and 3 weeks before the job starts to nail down the selections. Here's the budgets for everything. Of course, if you want to spend more, fine. But what we're finding is that it's actually an easier sale if we err on the higher side of allowances. And then usually they end up getting some kind of credit back to their project. It's just easier to give money back than ask for more.
And when you do it with Jackie, has it always just been like, well, I guess let me like, even now, is it here's ballpark blanket, like you have X amount in allowances, and then that way maybe she, when she's talking to the homeowner, she hears like, back to the range hood example, they keep bringing up custom range hood, so she knows, look, I'm going to actually take an extra $3,000 away from the range and build a really cool range hood, but then give them more of like a general range. Like, is it to that level where she like has so much leeway with the allowances that she kind of feels it out from the client, so that way she sticks within the overall budget? Or are you pretty dialed in that's like, this is going to go towards this finish, this is going to go towards this finish, and then it's up to her to figure out how to make each individual finish stay in line with what you gave her?
So I break my proposals out with the selections to every single fixture item, things like that. So it's like, you can look, again, it's a playbook. So you can look at the whole selections part of the proposal and see, we got 500 for a light fixture. We got 10,000 for a countertop. We got 25,000 for countertop, blah, blah, blah. So it's not like just one big bucket. Like, you have $50,000 to spend on selections. Don't go past that. Like, I get very granular with it to make everyone's lives easier. Like, if I set that up from the beginning, then I can pass it off to everybody that needs to be involved, and they can understand what I was talking about.
Sure. And then you get through all that. Talk to me about like the actual like communication process that you and Jackie and the client have as this is happening, because she's doesn't work for you. So she's not like in your office every single day, I'm assuming. So how are you staying in communication with the client and with Jackie as this design process is happening?
Jackie and I have a couple different things we do. We have like a Google spreadsheet that we have that has all of our projects that we have together, what stage they're at from my company, what stage they're at with her company, what needs to happen next. And then her and I are in constant communication. I mean, we have so many projects going together. And we see each other so often that we are constantly talking about projects in different phases. They send me floor plans before they send them to the customer, so we can discuss some things, just so we can stay on top of what things might cost. We've been very fortunate in the sense that, I'm not saying that our customers don't have budgets, but they're usually a lot more loose. And we're finding that if we could be informative and just let them know, hey, this is what this is going to cost, without trying to twist their arm and ask them, hey, how much money do you have? And more just say, hey, what are you dreaming about? How can we show you what that's going to look like? It just leads to less friction along the process.
And how many like projects do you have going at any given time with Jackie, whether it's like a project that's still in design or it's already in production, but I'm sure she still has some sort of hand in making sure that it's aligning with what she designed?
As it stands right now, 15 to 20.
Okay. So, and of that 15 to 20, how many like are in design versus actually like in production?
5 to 7 going on currently, and the rest at different stages of design. Some of them are contracts signed, retainers signed. We're just waiting to start them. Others we're in the middle of designing things. Others just signed contracts, and now we're working on getting a floor plan. things like that.
So there's a lot of moving parts where it's a lot of like, you have some things that are like brand new that you talk about. And it's like, hey, let's move on to this other project. They just signed. Let's move on to this other project. And it's, hey, we're going through punch lists at this point at the very end. Let's make sure that everything's like squared away.
Right.
Okay. And then you talked about how she is involved in JobTread for you. So I guess let's talk about JobTread for a bit. What are you doing in JobTread that you feel like makes it both easy for the client, but also easy for your team to make sure that both parties are like on the same page for what's going on?
Well, so one thing that is just standard procedure for our projects is that we really make use of the daily log feature. So what that is in JobTread, if people aren't familiar with it, essentially what we do is we do a report every single day that we're at a project. And this report is like, a couple sentences to a paragraph of the work that we did that day, who was all there. And then we post pictures of the different things that got performed. And that's not only going to be stuff that we do in-house, because I have in-house guys producing stuff. But we also use a lot of subcontractors. So we make use of that every day. And customers have told us that they really value us just kind of showing them along the way, like what's going on. Some of our customers aren't living in their house while we're working there. So that's also pretty helpful. Or they might go out of town, or they might be at work all day, things like that. And there could be times where, in construction, things might look like not much got done that day because they were really finite details or behind the walls or things like that. So it's nice to kind of have an explanation. Also to show customers too that we care enough about what we're doing that we're going to photograph it every day and show you like, hey, this is what we're doing. Like, we're not trying to pull a switcheroo or, hide what we have going on because we did something we shouldn't be doing,
Mm-hmm.
So that part of JobTread, we have published schedules. So I have a guy at my company. His name is Matt, and he's essentially our operations manager. One of his biggest jobs is to keep our schedule. So we run our whole schedule, subcontractors, in-house guys, all projects through JobTread on the schedule. So that's super helpful for customers because then they can kind of see what's going on every day. They can see what's going to happen next week. The schedules might be dynamic to a point, but we keep them pretty tight. I mean, we can project out up to 6 weeks in advance, like what's going to be going on where, and we are able to stick to that.
And when it comes to I don't know, like communication policies or standards, are all your project managers, are they trained on this is then how you use JobTread to then communicate what's going on in the project to the homeowner? I guess how are you using JobTread as a tool when it comes to, I guess the day-to-day communication outside of just daily logs?
Yeah, so we lay that out from once they sign the proposal with us, we'll start messaging them through JobTread. And then that centralizes all the communication that I might have, that my team might have with the customers in JobTread itself, so that, it's everybody, it's not lost in emails. That's the thing that's happened in the past is that I'll talk with the customer about something and then they'll see, I'll forget to tell somebody. And then, it's 2 months later and then something got missed. And now that we centralize everything in JobTread and I kind of get the customers in that routine from the beginning, it really helps us all just keep all the information all in one place, because our projects are, very, very detailed and have a lot of moving parts.
Do you ever get resistance? I know for us, we use Slack as our daily communication. So if you send me a text and it's something that the team needs to see, I'll say,
Yeah.
hey, do me a favor, post this in your Slack channel. I'll respond there. Do you ever get resistance from homeowners or clients that say hey, that JobTread sounds great, but it's better? Email.
No, I wouldn't call it resistance necessarily. We've had some customers that it took a little while for them to adopt it, but I would kind of do the same thing. I'd copy their email, put it in JobTread, and just reply to them. JobTread makes it pretty simple because they can actually reply from their email inbox. So they don't necessarily have to jump in the portal if they don't want to reply to messages. But I think the customers that we work with Pittsburgh, there's a lot of people in tech here in Pittsburgh. So I think it's more like they're excited by it more than think it's like a drag or something that's annoying. Especially when they see that like we're doing this for their sake. We're not doing it to like try to annoy them or make things more difficult. So it hasn't really been a fight.
Okay. And then when it comes to like your team and like communicating, you have a lot of people that are in the trades. They got into the trades because they don't want to have to communicate. They don't want a white collar job where like they have a headset on, they're talking to people. They'd rather just like put their head down and go. However, you can't really do that, especially if you're like a project manager, because you have to have that communication level. So I guess for you, when it comes to hiring the team, what are you looking for when it comes to communication skills from whoever it is that you're bringing onto the team?
I would say up to date. As I've looked for people, especially with my management team, it was more that they had more people skills than construction skills first. And that's been super helpful because my two top guys, not saying they're not very knowledgeable with what they're doing, but they really are great with communicating with customers, with the subs, with our employees, things like that. And I think us keeping that theme and kind of working from the top down and just kind of putting everyone in a good rhythm and good habits about how we communicate for our projects has just created good habits so that as we hire more people, this is just kind of the established process and how we do things. So, they either get on board or, they decide it's not a great fit.
And when you look at them, are you like balancing like, hey, you have X amount of construction experience, but you're also like, but you're okay at communication, or are you bringing people in that are more like they are the communication side and like construction's like limited or like non-existent at all? And you're like, look, I can teach you this stuff, but the hard stuff to teach you is being passionate about keeping everybody on the same page from the client all the way down to the subcontractors.
We don't hire so often that I have to really pick between them. I could be choosy enough as we grow here with who I'm looking for, but I'd say it's very important to me to have a happy medium of knowledge in the industry, but also good people skills. Especially with our management team, they don't necessarily have to know the intricacies of every single trade. But they do need to know how to communicate with people very well so that they can just keep the projects moving forward and making sure that, the quality standards are upheld.
When it comes to like the communication within the team, are you tracking that? Like, are you in JobTread saying, all right, we did every single daily log today, and then you sent like a group chat to everybody saying, great, good job on doing the daily logs? Or I guess like, how are you keeping like accountability around making sure that clients are being communicated with?
I think in the beginning when we were just really starting to implement some of the things in JobTread, I would keep more track of that. But now it's just become such a habit with all of us that it's just, it's kind of like breathing. Like, this is just how we do this. Like, there's no like thinking about it or anything like that. Like, the guys know to clock in. They know to clock into whatever they're doing that day. They know they have to do daily logs. They know if we're talking to customers and it's important information, they have to put it in there. The project managers know that when they're emailing back and forth with customers, they do it in JobTread. Like, it's just how we do things now.
And is this like a mapped out process that like whenever a new, because at some point you got to like go out and find a new sub, are you like training them on this is how we do it, so that way this is what we expect from you? Or I guess how do you approach it with like a subcontractor?
We have that discussion with them. We have a subcontractor agreement that says, we do all important information, pricing, things like that, all through JobTread. But we have discussions with them about that. The subs, probably we have a little bit more of a fight with getting them on board than the homeowners we work with. But at the same token, like, we have built up a pretty decent reputation, and We don't beat subcontractors up on their price. We pay them the day that they invoice us, things like that, which is unheard of in our industry. So they're all eventually willing to play ball with us just so we can get to the end goal, which is, finishing a great project together.
And during you do daily logs, like during the actual project, are you doing like weekly walkthroughs? Are you like at the end of each phase of the project, like you're walking through it? I guess what is like you have like your daily logs, like, we have a remodel right now. I get daily logs to my email, but we still have like a personal touch from our PM. So how do you guys approach that?
I'd say we don't. It's kind of project dependent and customer dependent. That's something that we bring up with them from the beginning and just kind of see what they would like from us. So if they would like us to say, hey, every Thursday at noon here, we're going to meet here on the project, walk through what's going on, we're more than happy to accommodate that. Other people, they're like, hey, we follow along the daily logs. We're here every day. We talk with you guys every day. Like, we don't necessarily need to formally do something like that. So we're open to doing whatever the customers would like us to do in that case, within reason.
Okay. And then project's done, you do your punch list, you walk away. Is there any sort of like post communication to make sure that like, you just went in there, did an addition, and you walk away the next day, it's all fallen down?
Oh yeah, for sure. So we, on the final invoice that people get, I give them the warranty information. We put everything under a 2-year warranty that we do. And then also, we have a standardized follow-up process. So every project we follow up at 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, 23 months. That way we just see, how's everything going? How's everything looking? And that allows us to go back and, if paint needs touched up or something like that, like, they know that they have a specific time that we're going to follow up with them about that and come back if there is an issue.
And are you adding that into like high level? So in that way it's like on the calendar to say, hey, call back, Aaron and Tori about their project?
We have it in a spreadsheet, but I'm sure there's some way to automate it. I think, a lot of these things, like we've grown so fast that it's implementing things as we go here, trying our absolute best.
Sure. And then I know one of the things that we built up for you on your website was like a JobTread page, and you kind of just like, I think, popped up one day and it was there. So we use like the guinea pig to build that thing out. Do you use that with clients on the phone or ahead of time at all? Or do clients ever comment on, wow, okay, I see exactly how you guys use this project management software?
That it is something that I use as a selling point for sure. That's something that I have sent to customers beforehand. I've sent it to them after we've done initial walkthrough. It's something that I go over with them on our first call. It's been very helpful for us to have that on our website, just so they can see kind of what it will look like to work with us.
And in your opinion, is that something that like you do it because you like to do it and you appreciate JobTread and they're like, this is fine? Or are they like nerding out over this stuff because they're like, oh, this is like, wow, I didn't realize you had a software. Like, this is pretty intricate.
I think most people that we've worked for from maybe 55 below, like, nerd out to it to a point because it's just different. Like, it's not what they're used to. Like, it's not their mom and dad's contractor does not do this. The majority of the people that are in our industry do not do this. Which is bizarre to me because it's honestly like it makes our lives so much easier. So I don't know. I mean, I give people a lot of credit that did everything with pen and paper. Like, I don't know how, because I need help staying organized, and using the softwares we use is what keeps that possible.
Yeah, I would say from like, as I'm now going through like a home edition right now, and we have JobTread and we're using it as like the homeowner, the daily logs, like my wife, I don't think has ever logged in or looked at one really. But I look at them, but it's more so what I've found I appreciate is more so that like, it shows me that like the project manager knows what's going on within the project. So it's not necessarily that like I look at the daily log and I'm like, oh wow, like the framers were here today. That's amazing. I'm so pumped about that. It's more so like, okay, I know that the PM, knows what's going on with my project at any
Yeah.
given point. So it's now if there is an issue, I can pop in there. I know we've had like some things pop up with some change orders to like cause a delay. But I know from our side, it's great because like, on the last renovation we did, they didn't use a project management software. So like my wife and I didn't know if there was a delay, how much of a delay, was there a delay at all? While in this one, it's, hey, now we're looking at this as like the target time. So it does help us to like at least understand what's going on versus like feeling left in the dark because it does have the capabilities of being able to go in there and check out like the live scheduling. Like the change order stuff as a homeowner is fine. It just makes it easy. It's kind of like
Yeah.
it's not like this feature that I'm like,
Extravagant. Yeah.
yeah, like, oh, I'm doing it because instead of DocuSign, I can do it right in JobTread and pay for it. Like that's fine, but it's ultimately like the communication side of like, I now know that you know what's going on. I know what the schedule looks like. You could tell me, hey, tomorrow they're going to be inside the house because we need to do X, Y, and Z. So like we have that availability that like that makes it much easier to be able to go through this project as like a homeowner versus like some of the other features. They're great. They're probably way more for you than they are for me, but those are the specific things that like I love.
Yep.
Um, last thing on like the whole like client experience side of things. When you now, you've been in this now for 3 years and some change. You've grown really fast. I mean, to go from nothing to now you're running, 15 to 20 projects at a time, but your revenue this year is what, like 3 million?
Yeah, around there. I mean, it might be a little bit past depending on what sells the rest of this year, but it'll be up past 3. Yeah.
Which is like super amazing for doing that in 3 years. What's something that you wish you knew about the whole client experience side of things 3 years ago that you now know now, but if you could go back, you say it to Andrew of 3 years ago?
I think just setting more expectations from the start on what it's going to look like to do this project from in a number of different ways, what it's going to cost, how long it's going to take, how their lives are going to be affected, things like that. I kind of tiptoed around that for too long, first couple of years. And I've just learned more now. Like I am the head of sales in my company, but I'm not like a salesman. I just inform like, this is what this is going to take. And we're going to be the best person to get you from point A to point B. But, I'm not trying to sell you on anything really. Like this is just based on us doing enough of these. Like this is what it'll take.
What do you think changed? Like you said at the beginning, it wasn't good about expectations. Was that like you didn't know what expectations to set? Was it you were afraid that if you overdid it, they're going to not move forward? What was the cause of that?
Probably a little bit of both. As you're starting your business, you don't have a backlog. You don't have the reputation. So you kind of are just thinking that, this is my one shot, so I can't blow it. And I don't want to blow it by telling them information that they're going to know one way or another anyways. So, you can go down a road with them for months and then it ends up sour at the end because they feel like they weren't totally informed, or you could just put your cards on the table from the beginning and everybody can stay happy.
Yeah. How do you handle it now? Like if you miss something, like, hey, like we thought we had this and that's not the case. So that's now a missed expectation. Are you just calling the client up or are you going out there to see them? I guess like what is your approach to maybe delivering bad news because you missed something at the beginning?
I think it depends on what stage of the project we are, but like, we have a project that we're about to sign right now that's pretty big. It'll be our biggest to date. And when I originally talked with them, like we were talking in a range of what I thought it might take to do this project, but this is multiple 6 figures. And as the plans have developed and things have developed, like it's gone a little bit past what we originally talked about. So as soon as I knew this information, I said, hey, let's pause here. Let's talk and see, based on the information I have now, here's kind of where we're sitting. I don't want to keep traveling down this road with you if this is something you're not comfortable with. If you are, great, let's keep rolling through. But I just want to keep that, in front of them as much as I can so that they're not getting blindsided anywhere.
How do they take that?
Seemingly fine. I think people are realistic in that most of the time they're realistic in the sense knowing that, hey, if we're adding some work to the project, we're adding some work to this house, and what we originally talked about, like that will add some cost. I mean, I have worked with a few clients that don't understand the concept of if you add things, it adds cost, but, majority of people are reasonable and they just want to be treated with respect and with honesty. And if you can do that, then it's just a matter of, hey, does this make sense financially? If it does, let's do it. If not, then no harm, no foul.
How much of that stuff do you think is like, when I say that stuff, I mean, the people understand that if they make changes, it's going to add money to it. Because you hear the other side a lot, which is they want to add all this stuff without paying for it. Do you think this is you are attracting people that have that mindset that automatically know if I add stuff, it's going to add cost? Or do you think it's the fact that you're setting certain expectations up front that it's kind of like tipping off to them, look, if you add like, this is the price that we have dialed in for this thing. However, if you add a bunch of stuff, it's going to add money to it.
I think, especially when it comes to our proposals and contracts, I'm so clear with what this is covering that they understand that if it is not in what I have written in the 12-page proposal that you just signed with me, then stands to reason that it's not included in the price.
Okay.
And I think that comes, from me just being descriptive enough.
So you make the proposal a big deal so they know it's a big deal compared to like, I'm sure some people like boil it down to like every single item, which gets to be kind of overwhelming. But I've also seen it where you could do basically an entire kitchen on one piece of paper and it's not super descriptive. So it sounds like you make it a big deal so they then perceive it as, okay, this is now the final say in what I'm going to get in my home.
Yep. Yeah. Yep.
And are you building that custom? I mean, 12 pages is like a lot. Are you building that custom every single time? Or is it like templated out where you have to fill in the details? Like, how does that work?
So we have like 4 main things we do: kitchens, bathrooms, basements, additions. So I have a template for each one. It's built out enough where I have to delete things out of it. If like that project, if that project has tile instead of hardwood, like I have all the different flooring types listed out so that it makes it as fast as I can. I mean, it still takes a fair bit of time with some of these bigger projects. I'm not going to sit here and say I do it in half an hour, but it doesn't take me weeks, either.
Sure. Okay. Love it. Is there anything about like the whole JobTread or client experience process that you feel is like, hey, this is really important and we haven't even touched on that yet?
For me personally, like the more, for at least with how I think, like the more information that I can have up front about a subject, the easier it makes me making a decision. And I try to run our business that way where we can let people know up front, like, here's all the information we can give you for the project. That's important. I mean, I don't overwhelm them with random things, but I do that because that way they can see, okay, here's all the facts. Let's make a decision based on these facts. And we keep that true through the whole time we're dealing with them. That way, as we progress through their project and as it's finished and everything like that, like all of the information's on the table. So, I think that's something that's in our industry that guys struggle with, is that they don't treat the client relationship as kind of like a working partnership. They treat it more as a transaction. And while it is a transaction, like at least the project we're doing, like they're for large amounts of money for long periods of time, and a relationship one way or another is going to have to be built during that project. So why not make that easier by staying in communication? You wouldn't communicate with a friend like some people communicate with their customers. Like, why not? I'm not saying you have to be best friends with everybody, but why not make it, at least easier?
Sure. Cool. All right. Well, Andrew, I appreciate this. The cool thing about like, you having everybody involved in the JobTread side, I know there's a lot of people that are like resistant to JobTread, but you'll be at JobTread Connect this year, correct?
Yeah, me and my team will be there.
Okay. Why bring the whole team? Like, it'd be cheaper for you just to go.
Not bringing the whole team. I'm bringing 2 of my managers. Well, because they're in JobTread just as much as I am, if not more. So each of them own different parts of it. And I think that there's learning opportunities there. And also, to be honest, like, I want my team to enjoy the fruits of our success. Like, so if that means they get to come down to Dallas with me and stay in a nice hotel and go to a nice dinner and, enjoy stuff like that, like, they earn that too. It wasn't just me that earned that. Like, I couldn't have done that without them. So, it's twofold, for information and just so that they can kind of pat themselves on the back for doing a good job.
Love it. Cool. All right, everyone. If you are going to be at JobTread Connect, by the time this comes out, this will be like early January, actually. So Andrew will be down there. I'll be down there. But otherwise, if not, Andrew, thanks for coming on and just going through the process, the approach, how to get the team involved, and basically just like honestly how to use JobTread to your advantage and, make it all happen. So thank you very much.
All right. Thanks, Logan.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time.